I'm Lady Galaxy, and this video is the full version of the inspiration of the Divine Feminine stencil. Say that 3 times fast. No, thank you. I completed this painting in 2 parts, which I've stitched together for convenience purposes. I started out with a stencil that I've used 3 other times so far. Each time she lends herself to a different kind of painting. This time I was inspired to put the planets inside the female form and to make her a little darker. I was tickled with the inspiration as I sat in my barn all by myself, jamming to the music and thinking about life. It's interesting painting alone. My head knows that I'm videotaping for digital content, but the creative side of me really does just disappear. So I get an opportunity to melt into my work without interacting with an audience. Of course, I miss my audience more than anything in the absolute world. I mean, I truly miss the interactions while I'm painting. But painting alone has lent itself to a very different form of art. Also, I seem to take a little more time when I'm by myself. Even if my assistant is hanging out and helping and making the world around me functional, I am still kind of alone, unless she's chatting. If she's chatting, that's a whole nother story. But we don't have to go there. She's going to throw something at me. Anyway, meanwhile, back in the barn, and I'm all by myself. I had an interesting paint session this time, and it's the first time I've been completely alone since my assistant came back and has taken over as manager, handler, assistant, web designer, etc., etc. And because of that, I really got to allow my inspirations to just take over, just see what flowed. I actually painted some really crazy things, and I'm looking forward to sharing each one with you. Making the full videos has been much more complicated due to music and background noise. Also, a lack of editing knowledge, to be 100% honest, but, you know, this old dog is learning new tricks. Just so I can keep painting with you and for you. It looks like I'm finally laying out the planets. In this case, I'm using old sockets to make a small enough planet to fit inside the stencil that I created. And each one is painted, highlighted, and then marked off by this socket, or in that last case, it looks like the lid to a laundry soap. I know I've told you guys before that I've gotten myself in trouble picking through recycling bins, and without my live show, I don't get the variety of sizes and shapes that I used to have. So it's an interesting challenge to find new sizes and shapes. That's how the sockets came to be. Before we moved, my husband cleaned out the tools, and he had his and my mother's and mine and his father's, and he put together 2 good sets for us, and then we had this basket of random odd things. So now I have a box in my shop called Mama's Metal. Some I use for my rust projects, and some I use for painting. Nothing goes to waste around us. As a matter of fact, it's a goal of mine to make our homestead and the world around us out of recycled materials. What can we use that already exists to better our world instead of getting new stuff? Anyway, it looks like I'm just about finished up with part 1 in this painting. I'm excited about being inspired by this Divine Feminine series. With all that's going on in the world and the struggles of women as a whole, I feel like it's a very good time to honor the feminine and remember that we are more than society's expectations or our appearances. We're even more than moms and sisters and best friends, because each of us has our own story. And no matter what your story is, you're here today, and that's good enough to celebrate. So, yeah, the Divine Feminine paintings have been kind of a big deal to my head and my heart. You'll have to tell me in the comments what you think of them. And at the end of this video, I'll include all of them in the series since I created this stencil. Let's see what I've got going on down there. We're removing the lids, and that means we're just about done with part 1. I can't wait to show you. I'm really looking forward to solving my music problem and upgrading my video equipment so that I can do lives and so that I can rig the system where I can speak to you while I'm painting. I would love for you to hear my thoughts and my inspirations as they occur, because that's where it all happens, right in the moment. And I promise you right now, while it looks like I'm concentrating so hard on that tiny detail, I'm actually thinking about what I would say to you if I could. And so there it is, part 1 of the Divine Feminine. I made a little mess, but don't mind me. Through the magic of internet and video editing, we're going to go straight into part 2. We'll pretend it magically dried, just like that, and we'll get started again. I wanted the outside and the inside to both be space. I think more like she's a nebula this time. Also, she's the only one looking in the opposite direction. I'm not sure why that happened. I just know when I sat her down to get started, that's the way she wanted to face. Some of you probably think I'm being silly referring to the stencil as having a desire to be facing one way or another. It isn't as if she's speaking to me, but I suppose in a way she is. She isn't using audible words, but when I look at a white canvas or a white piece of paper, I see the finished product. I don't see the white. I see the potential. And if that's the way she's facing when I see it the first time, then that's the way she's facing. I don't really have a choice. When a painting wants to be a painting, I have to make it. I don't always love them all. I don't always know why I paint things. Sometimes I just have to get out of my head. As a matter of fact, if you've seen my live shows, especially in locations like New York or Wisconsin, where I was so busy that I couldn't think for myself for hours on end, fulfilling custom orders and special requests, that I would yell the words, head painting. And quite often, if I yelled head painting, somebody would just say sold right away because they knew that I had gotten stuck in my head and I needed to get a certain painting out. Generally, they were pretty wild and spacey, considering that most of my orders were very specific, and I just needed to free those thoughts. Anyway, the head paintings get stuck in my head, and I got to get them out. Even now, my family laughs at me when I just jump up out of nowhere and say I have to run to the shop real quick. Obviously, I can't just sit down and paint every time something occurs to me. It takes setup and planning and the right clothes. Everything I own has paint on it. But I can run to the shop and lay out designs or go look at something and see if the design has already been done. Sometimes I just go out to the shop and make notes. Other times I think I have a painting in my head and then I go out to the shop and it's the mama belly or the charcuterie board or some other random project that says, "Ha, got you out here, now you have to work on me." But I guess that's the life of an artist. My mind does what my mind wants to do. And who am I to argue with? My intuitive mind. That reminds me, in a book I read recently that I actually very much enjoyed, it put a thought in my head. The author didn't exactly say this, but what I took from the moment was, you are not the voice in your head. You are the one that silences it. Think about that for a second. Listen to the voice in your head, and then ask it to hush. Take a deep breath. That silences you. The power to create that silences you. I bet the voice in your head is screaming now. Isn't that interesting? I've been toying with that in my meditations ever since I realized what the author was saying. And now I'm fascinated to do some research on some different forms of meditation. I wonder what kind of paintings I could do if I really could silence that thought in my head. I wonder what kind of paintings I could do if I could truly pull myself into that meditative state again. Those of you that know my story know that I've actually had a difficult time meditating since I was shot during a peaceful protest in 2003. But we don't have to go there. This is the fun part. I've lifted up all of the blocks and I no longer see as well as I used to. As a matter of fact, my paintings are out of focus to me when I'm this close. So in order to see the painting clearly, I have to pull it away from me. And I knew that there was a piece I wanted to add, but I had to pull it off at a distance and make sure that that space was still there for me. And so I did. And now I'm going to add just a couple of finishing touches. And that is another trait of mine, the finishing touches. And then one more thing, and then one more thing. You'll have that with me. And so just a couple of quick finishing touches before we can call this painting complete. But you know, we need the rings of Saturn, and we need planets that look like the Millennial Star, even though I'm a Gen Xer. We're definitely not getting into that on this particular video. But we have a few finishing touches. It looks like I need to add the sun coming from behind the earth, with a little spritz here, and a little spritz there. Hair. I would say it's the pleasures of working in a barn, but if you've ever seen my live show, I get the strangest things. Hair is the least of my problems. And the sun. There you have it. Finishing touches complete. Doing my best to focus. I need you to know that being a mother and getting older are the most hardcore things I have ever done. And there we have her. This is the latest version of the Divine Feminine. Here is the complete collection of the Divine Feminine. Let me know what you think of them in the comments. Which one is your favorite? And don't forget to do the things. By interacting, you really help me out as a small business and an artist.